You can stay at a hotel tonight. Come back tomorrow and collect your things. The woman who said it was barefoot in my bedroom, wearing my rose-colored silk pajamas and the pearl bracelet my mother had given me for my 30th birthday. Her name was Haley Brooks. She was 24, and 6 weeks earlier my husband had insisted we needed a live-in house manager. The Manhattan apartment she was ordering me out of had been paid for in full 2 years before I ever met him. It was 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, and I had just returned from Boston. The final day of a 3-day brand partnership conference had been canceled, so I caught an earlier flight without telling anyone. Not even Ethan, my husband of 5 years. On the way home, I stopped at a bakery in Soho and bought a box of hazelnut pastries he loved. For months, Ethan had been coming home late and keeping his phone within reach even in the shower. He blamed product launches, financing meetings, and the pressure of running Cole Home Technologies. I might have kept believing him if the company's accounts had not begun telling a different story. 3 weeks earlier, I had quietly hired an independent forensic accounting firm. Several expenses approved under Ethan's authority could not be matched to real projects, clients, or contracts. I had also asked my attorney, Daniel Reed, to review our prenuptial agreement, the shareholder agreement, and the voting proxy I had given Ethan years ago. At the time, I still hoped the worst thing I would discover was sloppy financial judgment. When I opened the apartment door with my fingerprint, the main lights were off. 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table. A man's dress shirt hung over the arm of the sofa. The air smelled of a sweet perfume I had never worn. Warm light spilled through the half-closed bedroom door. Then I heard Haley laugh. I left my suitcase by the entryway, took out my phone, and started recording before I walked down the hall. Haley was sitting on the edge of my bed. My limited edition handbag, pearl earrings, and an ivory dress had been tossed across the duvet as if she were choosing what to wear next. Water ran in the bathroom, and a man's shape moved behind the frosted glass. When she saw me, surprise crossed her face for perhaps 2 seconds. Then she smiled. "Claire, I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." She did not stand. She did not cover herself. Instead, she ran 2 fingers over the silk collar as though she were showing me a trophy. "Take off my clothes," I said. "It's just pajamas." She tilted her head. "Ethan said you never wear them. They were sitting in a closet going to waste." She said his name with the casual intimacy of someone who believed she had already replaced me. "How long?" I asked. Haley rose and walked toward me, still barefoot. "Do you really want to know? He's been miserable for years. You talk about budgets at breakfast and board votes at dinner. You gave him money, clients, and a beautiful apartment, but you never made him feel like a man." Her gaze moved to my suitcase. "Now that you've seen us, we don't have to arrange some awkward conversation. I'll take care of things here. You can stay in a hotel tonight, and tomorrow your assistant can pack whatever is left. This is my home. Whose name is on the deed doesn't matter." She lifted her chin. "Ethan will handle it. You've had 5 years as Mrs. Cole. It's time to let someone who actually loves him take the place." The shower stopped. Ethan stepped out wearing a towel around his waist. For one instant, panic flashed across his face. Then it hardened into irritation, as though my early return were the real offense. "What are you doing home?" Those were his first words to me. No apology. No explanation. Not even shame. Haley immediately moved behind him, replacing her smirk with a frightened expression. "She came in threatening me," she said. "She told me to get out." Ethan shifted in front of her as if I were the danger. "Haley is young, Claire. Don't frighten her. She is wearing my pajamas in my bedroom. I'll buy you another pair." His mouth tightened. "What happened has happened. We're adults. There is no reason to turn this into a scene." I looked at the man I had defended for years and laughed once, quietly. "You slept with an employee who lives in my home, and now you're asking me not to make things uncomfortable?" His face darkened. "I know I handled this badly, but our problems didn't begin tonight. You're controlling. You're cold. You make decisions for everyone and call it helping. In front of you and the Whitmore family, I have always felt like an employee waiting for approval." So that was how he planned to explain it. If betrayal could be wrapped in enough resentment, perhaps he believed it would stop looking like a choice. Haley rested a hand against her stomach. Please don't fight, she murmured. I don't want anything to happen to the baby. The room went still. Ethan turned sharply. What baby? She opened the drawer of my nightstand and removed a folded medical report. I'm 6 weeks pregnant. I wanted to wait until the doctor confirmed everything. Ethan took the paper. Shock gave way to wonder so quickly that it almost impressed me. Are you serious? Haley nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Then she looked over his shoulder at me. There was no fear in that look. Only triumph. Ethan held her by the shoulders for several seconds before turning to me. Then there's no point dragging this out. We should divorce. All right, I said. That was the first moment he looked truly surprised. He recovered quickly. Haley and I will stay in the apartment for now. The company also needs to remain outside your family's interference. Our prenup protects your trust and your design firm, and I'll give you a reasonable cash settlement. For a second, I wondered whether I had heard him correctly. Our prenuptial agreement stated in plain language that the apartment was my separate property. It also protected the shares held by my family trust. Ethan knew Whitmore Capital was the controlling shareholder of his company. He had simply grown accustomed to treating my silence as surrender. And because Haley is pregnant, he added, you should leave tonight. Stress isn't good for her. The last sharp piece of pain inside my chest suddenly went quiet. Fine. I pulled my suitcase upright and placed the box of hazelnut pastries on the console table. Have your attorney here at 9 tomorrow morning. We'll discuss the apartment, the company, and the divorce at the same time. You'd better not change your mind. At the door, I looked back once. Haley stood under the bedroom light in my silk pajamas. Ethan had one arm around her, and his expression carried the relief of a man who believed he had finally escaped a burden. Neither of them had noticed that the hospital name on Haley's report was missing a letter. They also did not know that once I reached my hotel, Daniel would file for a temporary financial restraining order in New York Supreme Court, or that every director of Cole Home Technologies would receive notice of an emergency board meeting scheduled for 10 the next morning. That night, they thought I had lost my marriage. In reality, they had just pressed the button that would bring their own lives down around them. At 8:50 the next morning, Ethan sat in my living room wearing a charcoal suit and the expression he used when pitching investors. He had not slept. Shadows darkened his eyes, but his tie was perfect. Haley sat beside him in my ivory dress, both hands wrapped around a cup of warm water as if she were already the expectant Mrs. Cole. At 9, the doorbell rang. Ethan expected a divorce lawyer. Instead, Daniel entered with the chief financial officer of Whitmore Capital, an independent director from Cole Home Technologies, and the lead forensic accountant assigned to the audit. I came in last. Haley's gaze moved from my black suit to the people behind me. Her smile weakened. Ethan stood. Why are company people here? To discuss the 3 things you raised last night, I said, taking the chair across from him. The apartment, the company, and the divorce. Daniel placed the first document on the coffee table. This residence was purchased by Claire Whitmore 2 years before the marriage. Title has remained solely in her name. Your prenuptial agreement confirms that the property and any appreciation remain her separate assets. Mr. Cole had a right to occupy it during the marriage. He never acquired ownership. Ethan looked at me. You promised you would add my name. I said we could revisit it after the first financing round. Later, you told me it wasn't necessary because the prenup guaranteed your right to live here while we were married. Apparently, you only remember the part of that conversation that helps you now. The apartment overlooked the Hudson and had become part of Ethan's carefully built image. He brought investors here for drinks and described it as the first home he had bought after becoming successful. He had told the story so often that he seemed to believe it. Daniel turned to Haley. Ms. Brooks, you have no right to remain here after the owner asks you to leave. Claire is not pursuing any claim over your use of clothing, provided you return every item that is not yours and depart under building supervision today. Haley clenched the fabric of my dress. Ethan said this would be our home. His promise cannot transfer someone else's property. Daniel opened a second file. Mr. Cole is fully aware of the company's ownership structure. Whitmore Capital provided $450,000 in seed funding and participated in 2 later rounds. Whitmore Capital and Claire's family trust currently controls 65% of the voting shares. Mr. Cole owns 20%. Outside investors own the remaining 15%. Ethan's jaw tightened. I know the percentages. Claire assigned her voting rights to me. That proxy has 5 years left. It is not irrevocable, Daniel said. The shareholder agreement allows immediate suspension if the proxy holder is suspected of fraud, a serious breach of fiduciary duty, an undisclosed related party transaction, or an unauthorized transfer of company assets. The independent director slid a formal notice across the table. Because of unexplained expenditures and an undisclosed licensing arrangement, Claire suspended the proxy this morning. At 10, the board will decide whether you remain chief executive officer during the audit. Ethan's fingers moved against the edge of the paper. That was what he had not expected. He knew who owned the company. He simply believed I would never take back the control I had allowed him to exercise. The forensic accountant connected her laptop to the television. Over the past 4 months, approximately $280,000 in company funds were used for hotels, jewelry, personal travel, and an apartment lease. Several charges were labeled client entertainment or product research, but there are no clients, meeting notes, or contracts connected to them. A hotel bill appeared on the screen. The date was my 30th birthday. Ethan had told me a server outage prevented him from coming home for dinner. The next slide showed the handbag I had seen on my bed the night before. The buyer was listed as the marketing department. The delivery address was an apartment Haley had used before moving into my home. Haley turned to Ethan. She had known he bought her expensive things. She had not known who was paying for them. That falls under my executive expense allowance, Ethan said. An executive allowance does not cover jewelry for a romantic partner, the accountant replied. It certainly does not permit reimbursement through fabricated vendor invoices. Ethan looked at me, and his voice softened. We built this company together. You cannot damage it because our marriage failed. I did not begin the audit because you cheated, I said. The audit began before I found you. The board is investigating how you used corporate money. The blood drained slowly from Haley's face. She was beginning to understand that this was not a revenge plan I had invented overnight. Daniel placed a third document on the table. We also need to address the pregnancy report Ms. Brooks presented. Haley sat straighter. That is private medical information. You had no right to investigate my records. We did not request your medical records, Daniel said. We verified a document you voluntarily used to support a claim for housing and financial benefit. He turned the copy toward her. The laboratory code belongs to a system the hospital stopped using 3 years ago. The physician named here has never worked at that facility. The QR code links to a website selling editable medical document templates. The hospital's legal department has confirmed that it did not issue this report. Haley went white. Ethan stared at her. Explain. It must be an old template, she said. I booked through a private service. Their reports may look different. Then we'll go to a hospital now. You choose it. I'll pay. She said nothing. Are you pregnant? Tears appeared instantly. I was afraid of losing you. Without something forcing the issue, you would have stayed with her forever. You never would have given me a real home. So you're not pregnant. She looked away. That was the answer. Ethan took one step back, as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. The night before, he had celebrated the idea of a child. Now he knew it had been a tool to force a divorce and pressure him into transferring property. Without a baby, you don't love me? Haley asked. The question exposed what they had called love. Ethan had wanted youth, admiration, and the fantasy of beginning again with someone who made him feel powerful. Haley had wanted a penthouse, a company, and the quickest route into a life she thought she deserved. Remove those things, and there was almost nothing between them. I'm not finished, I said. I displayed the activity log from the smart safe in my dressing room. At 11:23 the previous night, someone had entered the code. At 11:29, the security camera covering the dressing room entrance showed Haley placing 2 jewelry boxes into a travel bag. The camera did not face the bed or bathroom. It covered only the safe area and had been installed as part of the building's security system with written notice to all permanent residents. The boxes contained 2 necklaces and an antique brooch insured for approximately $120,000, I said. When I saw the access alert, I notified building security and the NYPD. Security did not search your luggage. They asked you to wait in the lobby until officers arrived. The jewelry was found after you agreed to open the bag in their presence. Haley shot to her feet. Ethan gave those to me. He could not give you property he did not own. Every piece has purchase records and insurance documentation. She seized Ethan's arm. Tell them. You said everything in this apartment would be mine. I said you could borrow 1 necklace for an event, Ethan snapped. I did not tell you to pack 3 jewelry boxes. Weren't you the one who gave me the code? The room fell silent. Daniel laid the police incident report on the table. The jewelry is being held as evidence. Whether the conduct amounts to theft, fraud, or another offense will be decided by investigators and prosecutors. No one in this room is making that determination today. Haley's composure finally broke. She and Ethan began blaming each other. You told me Claire was cold. You said you were treated like a charity case by her family. If you had not faked a pregnancy, I would never have demanded a divorce last night. You were the one who said a baby would force her out of the company. I sat in my own living room and listened as 5 years of marriage were reduced to invoices, lies, and 2 people revealing how little loyalty they had even to each other. I had expected to feel satisfaction. Mostly, I felt tired. At 9:50, the independent director stood. The board meeting begins in 10 minutes. Ethan, you can join remotely or come with us. Ethan picked up his coat and looked at me. We can still discuss our marriage. There is nothing left to discuss. He paused, then followed the director out. Haley tried to go after him, but the property manager blocked the door. Only then did she seem to understand that the apartment had never opened for her in the way she imagined. Her own belongings fit into 2 cardboard boxes. Change out of my dress, I said. Her face burned red. 10 minutes later, she stood by the elevator in gray sweatpants, clutching the boxes against her chest. The night before, she had ordered me out of my home. That morning, she could not take a single thing that did not belong to her. At 10 o'clock, the 28th floor conference room at Cole Home Technologies was filled with directors, corporate counsel, and members of the audit team. Ethan's name still appeared in silver letters on the wall. He had built an entire mythology around it. In interviews, he told reporters that he had risen from an ordinary sales job to become a self-made technology founder. He rarely mentioned where the first money came from, who introduced the first major clients, or whose assets had secured the bridge loan that once kept the company alive. I had never objected. I loved him, and I did not believe a marriage required keeping score over every spotlight. But when someone mistakes another person's generosity for proof of his own greatness, he eventually forgets where the boundaries are. The audit team began with the private expenses, then moved to something far more serious. Ethan had attempted to license 2 pending smart home security patents to a consulting company formed less than 2 months earlier. The licensing fee was far below market value. The registered manager of that company was Haley's cousin, Ryan Brooks. I didn't know they were related, Ethan said immediately. It was a backup partnership platform. The license never became effective. Corporate counsel placed a lease application on the screen. The consulting company's registered address is the apartment you rented for Ms. Brooks with company funds. You are listed as the emergency contact. Ethan had no response. Mark Dalton, one of the independent directors, did not support immediate suspension. Ethan broke procedure, he said, but we have a major financing round next month. Removing the founder today could frighten employees, clients, and investors. Give him 48 hours to explain. That resistance mattered. The boardroom was not my living room. Whitmore Capital's controlling interest did not entitle me to demand that everyone accept my version of events without scrutiny. Ethan saw his opening. Mark is right. This is a marital dispute being dressed up as corporate governance. Claire's family has always wanted to turn my company into another asset in its portfolio. Now they finally have an excuse. Several directors looked uncertain. I did not mention the bedroom. I did not show anyone the video of Haley in my pajamas. I asked the auditor to open an email Ethan had sent to the vice president of finance. In it, he instructed the department to delete vendor due diligence notes before the patent license was completed and to classify Ryan Brooks's company as a strategic partner. The next screen displayed the fiduciary duty acknowledgement Ethan had signed after the last financing round. I agree that the company cannot afford instability because a marriage ended, I said. That is why today's decision should not depend on whom Ethan slept with. It should depend on whether he can safely retain access to company accounts, patent files, and signature authority while these transactions are investigated. The vote passed 4-0, with Mark abstaining. Pending completion of the independent audit, Ethan was suspended as Chief Executive Officer. His authority to approve payments, access patent systems, and bind the company to contracts was revoked. He remained a shareholder and had the right to challenge the audit through counsel. When the organization chart refreshed on the wall monitor, his name disappeared from the CEO box. For the first time, the position he believed could never be taken from him was gone. He cornered me near the elevators after the meeting. "You planned to push me out all along." "No one stole a kingdom from you," I said. "The board stopped a manager under investigation from signing documents. I carried this company for years." "Then you know better than anyone that its bank account is not your personal wallet." His voice dropped. "I spent a small amount. Your family has more money than it could use in 10 lifetimes. Why are you trying to destroy me over it? This has nothing to do with how much my family owns. You're punishing me for the affair. I am ending the marriage because you betrayed me. You lost your authority because of what you spent, what you concealed, and what you were trying to transfer." The elevator opened before he could answer. Haley rushed out. Her hair was tangled, her eyes swollen. Reception had refused to issue her a visitor pass, but she had followed a group of employees through the security gate and into the elevator. "Ethan." She grabbed his arm. "They said you were removed. Is it true?" Employees slowed along the hallway. Ethan's face tightened. "Why are you here?" "My card stopped working and the apartment key is dead. You said you would take care of me." "That card was tied to a company advance account. Of course finance shut it down. But you gave it to me. Go somewhere else for now." "Where?" Her voice rose. "Last night you said the apartment and the company would be ours. Today you can't even get into your own office. Have you been lying to me this entire time?" The image Ethan valued most, Maid founder, powerful provider, man in control, was being peeled away in front of his employees by the woman he had chosen to protect. "Stop talking," he hissed. Haley stared at him, then laughed bitterly. "Don't yell at me because you lied. You used your wife's family to play billionaire founder. If I had known you didn't actually control anything, why would I have been with you?" The hallway went silent. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw them facing each other like two people finally meeting for the first time. That afternoon, the auditors found a $75,000 transfer. Ethan had classified it as a performance bond paid to Ryan Brooks's consulting company. The next day, the money had moved into Haley's personal account. In a message to a friend, she had written, "This is security for the baby. Once Claire signs the divorce papers, the apartment and the shares are the real prize." The message came from an old phone Haley had used for household purchasing. The company paid for the service, and she had failed to disconnect its cloud backup when she left. Corporate counsel obtained only business-related data involving vendors, company accounts, and the transfer, and preserved it under the court's authorization. The fake pregnancy was no longer merely a lie told in a bedroom. It had become part of a documented path by which $75,000 left the company and reached her account. The evidence went to corporate counsel, the insurer, and the police. Whether it met the elements of criminal fraud would be decided by prosecutors. That evening, Ethan called me for the first time since the board vote. "Claire, meet me. All communication goes through our lawyers. I can repay the money. I'll step away as CEO if I have to. Just stop pushing the police investigation into Haley and me. Once a report is made, I do not control whether investigators continue. And the company has other shareholders. I cannot trade their losses for a private settlement." He was quiet. Then his voice softened in the way it used to when he wanted me to solve something for him. "Are we really doing this after 5 years? Don't you miss any part of what we had?" I stood at the window of my hotel room, watching lights move across the Hudson. "I miss the man I believed you were," I said. "But he does not exist." The next day, Ethan was served with the divorce complaint and a temporary financial restraining order. The order did not freeze every dollar he needed for ordinary living expenses. It prohibited him from transferring disputed shares, emptying joint accounts, or disposing of assets connected to the investigation. He did not face those restrictions because a judge had decided that cheating deserved financial revenge. He faced them because bank records, contracts, and documents carrying his own signature had begun demanding answers. Over the next 3 weeks, the audit team reconstructed 2 years of decisions from thousands of emails, reimbursement requests, and contracts. The earliest problem had nothing to do with Haley. 2 years earlier, Ethan had pushed the company to acquire a small security technology team for $1.4 million. The price was high for the team size and unfinished patents. I had written a formal risk comment in the board materials, but at the time Ethan still exercised my voting proxy, and I chose not to oppose him publicly. After the acquisition, the lead engineers left. The patents failed to perform as advertised. Nearly the entire investment was lost. Everyone had treated it as an ambitious decision that had gone wrong. The auditors discovered that the transaction advisor was controlled by Ethan's college roommate. After the acquisition closed, a $150,000 success fee moved into an offshore account. There was not yet evidence that the money returned to Ethan, but he had never disclosed his relationship with the advisor. The most bitter part was what happened next. When the failed acquisition left the company short of cash, I pledged an interest in my design firm to secure a bridge loan. That loan prevented suppliers from stopping shipments. Months later, Ethan appeared on a business podcast and described that period as the moment he had single-handedly saved the company through courage and discipline. I had listened to the interview and felt proud of him. Looking back, I understood that I had not been blind. I had seen fragments and kept covering them. I protected him from embarrassment so often that I also protected him from consequences. The head of finance brought a stack of old approvals into my office. "Did you truly never suspect?" she asked. I suspected pieces of it. I told myself that investigating my husband too aggressively would make him feel I did not trust him. But whenever he crossed a process line, you repaired it. Yes. Then perhaps this did not start recently. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Ethan had not become a different man when he met Haley. He had spent years learning that selfishness, vanity, and risk could be hidden if someone else absorbed the cost. The first time he used a company account for a personal dinner, I helped finance correct the paperwork. The first time he exaggerated his ownership in an interview, I let it pass. The first time he brought his rage over a failed deal home and blamed me, I told myself that founders lived under unusual pressure. Each compromise looked too small to destroy a marriage. Together, they taught him that no matter what he did, I would remain in place and clean up behind him. In the 4th week of the audit, Ethan's executive assistant, Mia, contacted corporate counsel. She brought an encrypted company drive containing backups of emails in which Ethan instructed her to change the descriptions of expenses, remove due diligence notes, and prepare documents for a voting restructure. "I do not want to carry liability for him," she said. "He told me founders bypass slow procedures all the time." I believed him until legal explained what these documents could do to every shareholder. One email changed the entire shape of the case. A month before I came home from Boston, Ethan had asked outside counsel to draft a recapitalization plan. While he still controlled my proxy, the board would authorize a new class of supervoting shares for an affiliated fund. The company's most valuable patents would then be transferred into a subsidiary. The advisor to the affiliated fund was the same college roommate connected to the failed acquisition. At the bottom of the email, Ethan had written, "Move immediately after the divorce documents are signed. Do not give Claire or Whitmore Capital time to reorganize the vote." That meant his demand for a divorce had not been born in the shock of being discovered. Haley's fake pregnancy had accelerated the plan, but the plan itself was older. While I still believed we were protecting a marriage, Ethan intended to use the voting authority I had trusted him with to dilute my family's control and move the company's most valuable technology somewhere he could dominate it. The proposal might not have survived court review or shareholder litigation, but it proved that he had been planning to remove me for months. That email chilled me more deeply than the sight of him stepping out of my shower. Physical betrayal could come from appetite and cowardice. A months-long capital structure required patience, calculation, and repeated choices. While I had been selecting a restaurant for our anniversary, my husband had been planning how to push me out of the company my money had helped create. Ethan sent me a long email. He admitted crossing boundaries, but described the recapitalization as necessary to preserve founder control. He wrote that the Whitmore family had always made him feel like a poor man being sponsored by people who could replace him at any time. A company, he said, needed one voice. He also offered to end his relationship with Haley and attend marriage counseling if I stopped the audit. His final line read, "We both sacrificed for this company. Do not let emotion destroy what we built together." I read it 3 times, then forwarded it to Daniel. Emotion had not destroyed our company. Ethan had treated the trust of his wife, his employees, and his investors as an asset he could spend without limit. Once the restructuring email surfaced, Ethan understood that apologies would not restore his authority. He and Haley had humiliated each other in the office hallway, but within days they were working together again. Not because they loved each other, because they had found a common enemy. A week later, the building scheduled a supervised visit so Ethan could collect his personal belongings from the apartment. I arrived half an hour early. The moment I stepped out of my car in the underground garage, I saw him waiting near the elevators. Haley stood partly hidden behind a concrete column, wearing a cap and a mask. They had come before the time arranged by the lawyers. Neither had counsel present. Before walking toward them, I opened the emergency assistance page in the building's resident app and kept my phone in my hand. "We need to talk," Ethan said, moving into my path. "Our attorneys are handling everything. This is about a settlement." Haley came forward. "You already took the apartment and the company. Why can't you leave us alone?" The apartment was always mine. The company belongs to its shareholders, not to either of us personally. "I can't get work now. The household staffing agency terminated me, and former clients will not return my calls. They acted after learning that you submitted false work history, took an employer's property, and violated professional rules. I did not make those decisions." "Of course you did. If you had kept this private, none of it would have happened. So your problem is not what you did. Your problem is that other people found out." She looked away. Ethan stepped closer. "We can settle everything. You keep the apartment. I leave management and repay the company. In return, you tell the police that you no longer want to pursue the matter, persuade the company to drop its civil claims, and pay a fair price for my shares. Your shares will be valued under the shareholder agreement and independent appraisal. I am not naming a price in a parking garage. Haley will also need a relocation payment." I nearly laughed. She used a false medical report to help obtain $75,000 and packed my jewelry into her luggage. "You want me to pay her? I will take responsibility for the transfer." "With what? Shares you cannot currently move? A company account you can no longer access." His expression hardened. "Do not push people until they have nothing left. You chose the road that brought you here." Haley pulled out her phone. A video draft filled the screen. It showed a brief clip from the night I returned home, my arm rising as I pushed her away from me in the bedroom doorway. Everything before it had been removed, her wearing my clothes, ordering me out of my home, moving into my space. Everything after it had also been cut, including the fake pregnancy report. The draft headline read, "Investment Heiress Assaults Young Live-In Employee." "I send this to entertainment sites and social media," Haley said, "and you, your family, and the company become a joke. People will believe a rich wife abused a young employee long before they believe your attorneys." Ethan lowered his voice. "You care about the Whitmore name and the next financing round. Accept the settlement, and this video never appears." So that was their final weapon. "Post it," I said. They both stared at me. The original recording, the unedited audio, The safe log, the police paperwork, and the recording of this conversation are already uploading to my attorney, I said. If you release an edited clip as leverage for money or withdrawal of claims, Daniel will turn over the full file and ask investigators to consider extortion, witness interference, and defamation. Haley's mouth tightened. You're bluffing. Try me. The last trace of restraint disappeared from Ethan's face. You really want all of us destroyed? Consequences are not the same as destruction. He reached for my phone. I stepped back. Haley grabbed my wrist from the side and shouted at me to delete the recording. I pressed the emergency button already open on my screen. An alert sounded at the nearest security station. 2 guards arrived in less than a minute and separated us. Ethan tried to explain. Haley, panicking, knocked over a metal barrier that crashed against a car door. When police arrived, they did not declare anyone guilty because of wealth, status, or the volume of an accusation. They reviewed the garage footage, photographed the marks on my wrist, preserved the audio, and interviewed us separately. The video showed Ethan and Haley blocking my path, demanding money and withdrawal of claims, trying to take my phone, and physically grabbing me. For once, they could not edit themselves into victims. But Haley still did not give up. Late that night, the clipped bedroom video appeared on an anonymous account. It did not break the internet, but it spread quickly through New York gossip pages and technology industry groups. Commenters accused me of using family money to abuse a powerless employee. A few demanded that I step down from the board while the accusation was investigated. The next morning, one investor called and advised me not to appear publicly for a while. It was the first moment in the entire ordeal when I felt control slipping. The truth occupied contracts, timestamps, witness statements, and hours of footage. A lie needed 10 seconds. I wanted to post everything. I wanted the world to see Haley in my pajamas and hear every word she had said. Daniel stopped me. If you release private footage in anger, the story becomes a spectacle, he said. We will provide what is necessary, in the proper order and nothing more. He issued a short statement on my behalf. The circulating video had been materially edited. Full footage and related evidence had already been provided to law enforcement and an independent digital forensics firm. Because active investigations were underway, we would not publish unrelated personal material. The building turned over the time-stamped original file. A forensic examiner confirmed that more than 7 minutes had been removed from the clip posted online. The garage recording also captured the demand for money and the promise to suppress the video in exchange for a settlement. Within 3 days, the first 2 outlets that had amplified the allegation removed their posts and published updates. The independent directors stated that they had found no evidence that I had assaulted Haley without provocation. The edited video did not rescue them. It created another documented act for investigators to examine. 5 weeks after I returned from Boston, I finally went to my parents' home for dinner. My mother opened the door and asked whether I wanted tea or coffee, exactly as she always did. She did not mention the divorce. She did not ask about the rumors online. She served lemon-roasted fish, the meal I had loved as a child. Halfway through dinner, she put down her fork. "Claire," she said gently, "are you hurting?" I had believed I was past tears. I had not cried when I opened the bedroom door. I had not cried when Ethan ordered me out of my apartment during the board vote or when strangers online called me an abuser. But at my parents' table, the tears came before I could stop them. The end of a 5-year marriage could not be reduced to anger and victory. I was grieving the person I had trusted. I was grieving memories I could no longer examine without wondering which parts had been real. Most of all, I was grieving the version of myself who had gradually made her life smaller so that her husband could feel larger. My mother moved beside me and held me. She did not say she had always distrusted Ethan. She did not tell me he had never deserved me. She simply rubbed my back and let me cry. My father was quiet for a long time. "When you insisted on marrying him, your mother and I worried," he finally said. "But we knew you loved him. When the company struggled, we helped because we considered him family." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. His brow furrowed. "Why are you apologizing? Trusting the wrong person is not a crime." The person who exploited the trust is the one who owes an apology. If I had examined the early company problems more closely. You are not a surveillance system, he interrupted. And you are not Ethan's guardian. You can learn from your judgment. You cannot accept responsibility for the choices of another adult. Something inside me opened. For years, when Ethan's project failed, when he lost his temper, or when tension entered our home, my first question had been what I had done wrong. Was I too controlling? Did my family make him feel inferior? Had I insisted on too many procedures and made him think I did not believe in him? He had learned to ask those questions too, always directing them back at me. Over time, I forgot a simple truth. An adult does not cross a line because someone else failed to be sufficiently gentle. He crosses it because he chooses to. After dinner, I went into my childhood bedroom. My college design sketches and old business plans still filled one shelf. After my marriage, I had handed daily management of my interior design studio to my partner. I kept saying I would return once Ethan's company became stable. The company grew. The years passed. I became increasingly comfortable standing behind him. Inside an old planning notebook, I found a note written when I was 24. Build a small fund for women founders before I turned 30. I had turned 30 that year. I could not recover the 5 years I had given away. But the person I once wanted to become had not disappeared. She had simply been buried beneath marriage, crisis management, and habit. The next morning, I called my business partner. Do you still have the proposal for the Women Founder program? She was silent for 2 seconds, then laughed. I never deleted it. Are you finally coming back? For the first time since filing for divorce, I saw a future larger than the case. Yes, I said. I'm coming back. The divorce and corporate disputes lasted more than 6 months. The court did not strip Ethan of everything because he had cheated. Courts do not exist to perform emotional revenge for an injured spouse. They examine agreements, title records, money flows, fiduciary duties, and evidence. Those were far more damaging to Ethan than any dramatic declaration could have been. The apartment was confirmed as my separate property under the deed and the prenuptial agreement. My family trust and the company interests I had owned before the marriage were also excluded from marital distribution. Joint accounts and assets genuinely acquired during the marriage were handled under the prenup and New York law. The company audit concluded that Ethan's false reimbursements, undisclosed related party transactions, improper transfers, and attempted patent disposition caused approximately $360,000 in direct losses. Claims arising from the earlier $1.4 million acquisition moved into separate arbitration and litigation. Under the shareholder agreement's material breach provision, the company could repurchase most of Ethan's shares through an independently supervised valuation process. It was not confiscation. He remained entitled to the appraised value, but corporate losses, taxes, and litigation costs were deducted as the agreements allowed. When every number was finally calculated, he received far less than the fortune he had once assumed was untouchable. No court declared that he could never work again. But public filings, the audit findings, and the undisclosed transactions caused several companies to reject him for senior executive roles. The network that had formed around his title disappeared with surprising speed. Haley's case ended more clearly. Investigators confirmed that she had purchased and used a false medical report while participating in a scheme that moved $75,000 into her account. They also established that she placed jewelry insured for $120,000 into her luggage without lawful authority. Because the jewelry was recovered promptly, the permanent loss was reduced. She accepted a plea agreement that required repayment, restitution, community service, and probation supervision. The court, not my family, not the company, and not social media, determined the charges and sentence. There was no magical nationwide blacklist. There did not need to be. Her false employment history, professional misconduct, and public court record closed the particular shortcut she had hoped to use. Ethan faced civil liability for altered records, unauthorized transfers, and breaches of management duty. Some conduct was resolved separately with prosecutors. He lost the right to manage the company and retained only a small economic interest after the share repurchase. On the last day of the divorce proceeding, he waited for me in the courthouse hallway. 6 months had changed him. His suit no longer fit well. Fatigue had settled permanently beneath his eyes. Claire. I stopped but did not move closer. I'm not fighting the divorce anymore, he said. I only want to ask one thing. If Haley had never appeared, would we still have ended like this? Yes. He looked startled. She only exposed the problem sooner. Without her, there would have been someone else or some other crisis. What destroyed us was not one affair. You had already begun treating my work, my money, my home, and my trust as things you were entitled to use. He lowered his head. At the time, I thought you had so much that taking a little could not really hurt you. That is why you never saw me as an equal. You believed my resources should serve you, and whenever I asked for respect, you called me controlling. He was quiet for a long time. I regret everything. Do you regret losing the company or losing me? He did not answer. I no longer needed him to. When the judgment became final, our marriage ended. 2 months later, the company held its annual product event. The board had approved a new name. Cole Home Technologies became Lumen Home Technologies, removing the surname of the man who had treated the company like a monument to himself. Before the event, the head of communications asked whether I would appear on stage as chair of the board. For 5 years, I had preferred the background. I helped shape the original product strategy. I introduced the first investors and major clients. During the worst cash crisis, I used my own assets to secure financing. Yet whenever the media came, I stepped away. Ethan said the market needed to believe he had built the company independently. I told myself that allowing him the spotlight was an act of love. Healthy love does not require one person to become smaller so the other can look larger. On the day of the launch, I walked onto the stage in a white tailored suit. Ethan's name did not appear on the screen. Neither did our divorce or the scandal surrounding it. We discussed the products, the engineers who built them, the internal controls we had strengthened, and the company's plans for the next year. I did not need to humiliate him publicly to prove that I had won. Standing there was enough. After the event, my assistant approached me near the backstage exit. Ethan has been waiting downstairs for almost 2 hours. He says he only wants 1 minute. When I left the building, I found him under the awning in the rain. He was holding a white bakery box. Hazelnut pastries. The same kind I had carried home from Boston. Claire. He stepped forward. I remembered that you used to bring these back for me whenever you traveled. I looked at the box but did not take it. I brought you some that night too. The color left his face. Until that moment, perhaps he had never imagined the version of me who existed before I opened the bedroom door. The wife who had been tired from travel and still stopped at a bakery because she wanted to make him happy. I know nothing I say can change it, he said. I keep thinking that if I had not betrayed you, if I had not treated everything you gave me as though it belonged to me. Ethan, you did not only lose a wife. You lost someone who trusted you, defended you, and would have walked beside you for the rest of your life. His eyes reddened. Is there truly no chance? No. I said it without anger. I was not trying to punish him. I did not need to see him suffer. Some doors close because there is nothing healthy left on the other side. I walked past him. My driver opened the car door and I got in. In the rearview mirror, Ethan remained under the awning, holding the bakery box while rain blurred the street around him. As the car moved along the Hudson, a message appeared from my design studio team. The Women Founders program we had spent 6 months rebuilding had passed its first investment committee review. The following week, we would fund 3 companies led by women who had been told, in one way or another, that their ideas mattered less than the men standing beside them. I leaned back and looked at the river. When I married Ethan, people said I had married well. When his company became successful, they said he was brilliant and that I was a fortunate heiress protected by an ambitious husband. I no longer needed to explain who had carried whom through the difficult years. I did not need to prove that I deserved a place in a company my own work and money had helped build. After the divorce, I returned to Lumen and to my design studio. The apartment remained mine. I repainted the bedroom and replaced the furniture, curtains, and bedding. My closet no longer held dresses selected for Ethan's investor dinners. It held clothes I actually liked. On weekends, I had dinner with my parents, traveled with friends, or sat alone on the balcony and watched lights move across the water. Being alone was not as frightening as I had once imagined. What frightened me now was the thought of remaining inside a relationship that had already rotted, denying what I could see because beginning again seemed harder than staying. The night I came home early, I believed I had walked into the worst scene of my life. Later, I understood that the door I opened did more than reveal a betrayal. It showed me the way out of a room I had been trapped inside for 5 years. That marriage was not the end of my story. It taught me that no love, no matter how passionate, familiar, or publicly admired, should ever require me to disappear.